Good evening. I want to welcome everybody to our special council meeting of Monday, March 20th. This is a special meeting because it's mainly a workshop for the first time for us to really go through an iterative process with council facilities at 825 Tech Center Drive. So Director Schultz, I'd actually just want to go ahead and turn the meeting over to you.
You want me to take roll?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be really nice. Thank you.
Angelou,
Definitely here.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGregor,
Yes.
Padova,
Yes.
Renner,
Yes. Here.
Schnetzer. Here. Weaver.
Here.
Well, thank you, sir, and thank you for my faux pas. But Director Schultz, if you want to go ahead, please.
My technical assistant is technically assistant. There you go.
You only worked at a TV station, you would expect.
So, and Dan, you had meeting on that? Okay. Jeremy, let me look at that real quick.
What's the number on that? Can't see it there.
062 maybe, I'm not sure.
We'll find out.
So, thank you, Mr. Renner. I'm going to fumble around here for a quick second. But basically, we're going to walk through some of the questions that we talked about last week at committee. What I have this evening that I'll show you in 1 second here, excuse me, is
Mr.
an
Schultz,
actual, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, could
What's the number
the
on that?
chamber's access number?
It's that 4-digit code that's on the bottom, 9962.
It's cut off from our view.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like 9. It looks 00.
We have an issue with the live stream.
Yeah, the live stream.
It is recording, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to remedy that from my seat here.
That's
Say again?
It looks like it's back now.
What's showing in the YouTube feed, though? Am I showing in the YouTube
No.
feed? I'm not, yeah. Let me go up there. Sorry about that. I think that we were probably out there broadcasting and making a fool of myself, but everything was working just fine. So basically this evening, we're going to, Dan, just click on the screen on the left for me. Yeah, on the right, your right. There we go. So tonight, we're going to go over some of the more specific schematic design as it relates to 825 and the first floor where council chambers is located. So you guys have seen this slide before. Basically, all I'm looking to do here is orient you to the next picture that you guys are going to see. So the two purple dots on that screen are the two entry points. One is the main entry point that the public would be using. The entry point off the back, off that secured area, is the location in which, if employees chose to park in the back side of the building, that they would be accessing. The dotted blue line represents the next picture that you guys will see, and that's basically a blow-up or the area of the building that we'll be looking at next, that big blue dotted line. So as I go to the next slide here, what we're going to see on this particular screen here is just a variety of different things that I'm going to walk you guys through, and then we're going to go through the questions that I had asked. Yes, sir.
What's the access code? It's cut off.
9962. And then, so we're going to walk through a couple things here, and then we'll get into the questions that we did discuss last week at last Monday's meeting. So basically, again, the two purple dots are now orienting you to the front side of the building at the top of the screen. And off of the right side of the screen is the secondary entrance that was shown on the full site plan. Again, the top piece there is where the public would walk into the building and access the building. And the red, all the bright red that you see on the screen is the controlled public access area along the first floor. So basically the public would have unfettered access to that bright red area. You know the shape of 825, and you know that it's in basically a V shape. So there's more building to the top of the screen that you guys are not seeing on this particular picture, but that red corridor basically works the entire front of the building. And that bright red area is, again, the area that the public would have access to. This pink area, this is the secondary zone, so you would need badge access, like you need badge access to get into the council office. In order to access that corridor, you would have badge access, and that would be the secondary security level into the staff portion of the building. And then anything, what I'm going to refer to as south of there, in this washed out white area on my screen, and if you guys had this image in front of you, it would be in a faded blue. That happens to be the police department, but in order to access that from the pink area, you would again badge into those doors, creating a third level of access back to those areas. That would also be true for any area that's not in and around that council area and that public area off of the front of the building. Okay, so a couple other features. The main lobby, if you would, has just become outlined in blue, and that next purple dot that you see there on the right-hand side of the screen is the main public access window where folks would come, residents would come to do things like, you know, pay their utility bill, file a building permit. Any business that gets done here on the first floor would be done through those particular access windows. And I'll point those out, and the reason I'm pointing those out, I'll identify here in a minute. There is secondary access into the police department through that red corridor. The next purple dot that came up is just a secondary access. That is not the main access point to the police department, but you can get from the administrative side of the building into the police department. The public can through that door there. There's also other areas for staff to get into the police department along that pink corridor. What I identify next here is in the yellow area on the left-hand side of the picture. That is Mayor's Court. Okay, so the purple dot represents the Mayor's Court pay window. So that they needed to talk to a clerk. The clerk is behind the window, similar to what they are now, right immediately adjacent to the waiting area for Mayor's Court so that they can access, because obviously we'll still be using chambers as a dual purpose, city council chambers, but also function as a courtroom. So we're just pointing out that area in part so that you can see the Mayor's Court waiting area, which is immediately next to city council chambers. The clerk's office, and then the variety of different clerks that would service those main windows. What you would see down on the lowest portion of that are the PA offices, prosecuting attorney offices, right? So that's where our prosecuting attorney staff would go meet with defendants or people coming to pay citations. And we'll talk about how those relate to you folks here in a couple minutes here. So I think I have one more animation. There we go. Okay, so now what we see, we have identified, obviously, that you can all identify, bless you, sir. What you guys can all identify is city council chambers in the middle of the picture. Just immediately to the right of that and down a touch, the next purple dot there is the caucus room. As you can see, that is a relatively large scale, 20, 25 person, what I guess I would refer to as executive conference room that you guys can go in and have executive sessions. During the day, we can have larger meetings. If a developer is coming in with a team of folks like what we would have in the room next door here, we can use this sizable room without having to bring those folks up into the upper portions of the building. As it's designed right now, and in the main purpose of this particular picture here, not the purpose of this picture, but the way in which the architect currently has the offices for city council designed, they are on the right-hand side of city council chambers. The area that you see outlined in blue, that is south of that, inside of the secured perimeter, is what they are currently working on now, and what we should see council offices move and shift into that particular area when we see the next set of designs on Wednesday morning here. So we meet with the design team every other Wednesday. So we're coming up on a Wednesday. We basically sit around, we discuss each one of the floors, each one of the sections. We provide comments. We sit on a Thursday afternoon as staff inside of the building. We go over it in slightly greater detail. I send a relatively detailed email to the architect that says, this space is too big, this space is too small, this space is not oriented appropriately. And all of those comments at some particular point in time have gone back. And that is the iterative process that Mr. Renner talks about, that we're going through as a design team, and that we'd ultimately like to go through with you folks in this type of setting as the process goes. So basically the ask, and I don't have mouse control, but the ask of the architect was to take those offices that are currently off of the main lobby, and they're, well, first of all, they're disconnected from the rest of the overall design, and get them into a cohesive unit like the rest of the facility. The other thing that I'll also note is that the brown area there on the bottom portion of the drawing next to the yellow cube, that's the city attorney's office. Basically what we've asked them to do is create a similar situation to what you guys have now, where those two offices and intern space is available for the city attorney inside of the council office. And I think that it makes sense, if it's okay with you folks, that those two uses, if you would, are co-joined together. We can have further conversation about that. That's not one of my formal questions, but we could talk about that. Basically, that area that's in that big portion where I have the blue dotted outline, where I said that they would reorient you folks into, that currently is the emergency operations center when it does need to be activated. That room could also double as a large training space, not just for the police department, but also for city staff. There's a lot of stuff, I'm sorry, that's a technical term. There's a lot of items on the first floor of the police department that at this particular point need to be right-sized and shrunk, which then makes additional areas available for other things and other adjustments to be made, like city council chambers and like city council offices. So this here is basically, this here is a giant game of Tetris. Am I too old to know? No? Mr. Weaver, you know what Tetris is? Good. There you go, right, exactly.
Still do 'em.
This here is a giant game of Tetris, right? I've been referring to it as putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and right, but pieces of a puzzle always go in one place. Tetris pieces can go anywhere where they fit and they're most appropriate to go, and that's basically, at this particular point in time, the game that we're playing. So things adjust, and things adjust very, very, very quickly. I have the other example that I'll give. I said this to Jeremy earlier today. Is most of the time, unless I requested specifically, I don't even get digital copies of this, because basically it's just, it's digital garbage almost the very next day after they go back and start making some of these alterations. So right now, what you're looking at is 3 weeks old, and in the design world and in this world is old. But basically what I'm representing on the screen right now for you folks is the comments that have already gone back, whether those were comments made by you folks based on the email from last week, and or comments that we just made, because we can look at these things and talk about them intelligently. So again, I'm going to leave this up there, so that'll be up there all evening. Well, not all evening, for my allotted time. And then we'll get through some of the questions. So right now, what you see as far as city council chambers specifically, that is about 120 seats as you see it up there currently. As you notice, I'll point out some of the features of it, but you see on the right-hand side of the picture there, you see what appears to be tables. Those are tables that city staff, directors and such can sit at as a group, as opposed to sitting and spread throughout the audience. I don't necessarily know that they would present from that particular position, but they could present from that position if it was appropriate. Right now, from the picture that we're looking at, and again, it's just a preliminary picture, it looks like it's a little bit too far offset in order for it to actually be a good position to present from. But all that will be worked out in the design. We've asked for 10 folks to be able to sit around the dais. I know that I had to adjust that number to 11 so that we could have either a second clerk or a person working the technology also sitting at the desk. So that counts to 7 of you, the 2 gentlemen sitting over here this evening, the mayor and city attorney, counts to 11 and not 10. So we'll make that adjustment with them. We have seen in some instances, like City of Dublin as an example, the City of Dublin, the technology person actually sits off to the side, which is nice, but when you have staffing constraints, it's hard to be in 2 positions at once. Jeremy could almost slide over there and hit a couple buttons if he needed to, if Dan wasn't sitting in that particular position. If technology was off of the dais and someplace else, he'd physically have to get up in order to go interact with that technology. So I think 11 at the dais is appropriate, but we can get down to those minor details as the process goes. As you can see, that room there is a lot shorter but wider. Some of the constraints that we have in this particular room is it's basically a square. This is more of a rectangle, which gives us the ability to elongate that dais in order to give you guys a better sight lines, not just to the audience, but also to each other and promote conversation. So what you'll also notice is 2 smaller caucus rooms or conference rooms at the top side of the city council chambers, which would serve as defendant meeting room. So if a lawyer was here to meet with his client, they would be able to meet in those areas. Those are also areas that you folks could have constituent hours as an example. The other option for constituent hours are also those PA offices down in the south side of the lobby for Mayor's Court. The way this is currently designed, the overflow viewing would be on the Mayor's Court side of City Council chambers. I believe when the adjustments are made, overflow seating and overflow for Planning Commission or City Council will actually be in the primary lobby area in the red, and that would, I think, be a goal of the design architect to get folks, as soon as they come into the building, have access to City Council chambers, whether it's through the front door or even a side door, and feel as if they were part of the meeting through technology and audio and such. So those are the major design elements around, I'm probably leaving something off. Let me look at my notes here. We did not take the shorter dais off of the list, Ms. McGregor, so that stays as a big old check mark. And then the other thing that we talked about, okay, so this also, anything that you see, I probably should have started with this, that pink line that runs horizontally through the picture there, that is actually all, and anything north of that is all new building. So that is all double high ceilings and such, similar to the ceiling that you're representing here. The very bottom of the screen is the existing building, and then where that pink corridor starts is also existing building, New construction to the front side of the building. Basically what you guys are seeing there is City Council chambers and Mayor's Court. I will pause there and look for comments, questions, concerns as it relates to chambers proper, and then we can move from there.
Mr. Snitzer.
Just a question, you had mentioned the double high ceilings. Is there a cost difference if that were to be shrunk down? I guess the follow-on question would be, if so, is it really necessary to have double high ceilings? If you ask me, and because I'm no architect, but that just seems like a lot of wasted space to heat and cool. Doesn't seem to have any function.
I would agree. Presence is not function, right? I think it's more so that when the public walks into the building, they understand that they are in a facility and it exudes something that's a little bit different. When you have just a 14-foot ceiling, and it's a 12-foot ceiling to the rafter, and then a 14-foot ceiling to the deck, so the next floor above it. What ends up happening is you put that ceiling in there and you feel like you're very squatty. Does it need to be a double high ceiling? I don't necessarily know that it needs to be 2 full stories tall, but it does need to be at least a story and a half. What we've been told by the architect and what we've been told by the construction manager is that you're really dealing with nominal differences when you're not if it was 2 floors, you're dealing with a tremendous difference. But it being that it's just simply a double high ceiling, you're really not, you're not breaking the budget because you have a double high ceiling in the front of the building there.
Okay, so not a material cost difference.
Not a material cost difference, correct. And those things will be, right, so as we get deeper into the design and we begin to understand these things and, you know, we need to cut $1 million from the budget, where will we begin to look? We'll begin to look in some of those spaces and understand those things. Maybe it's just $100,000 that we need to cut. Okay, if you reduce this by 3.5 feet, there's your $100,000, right? So we'll begin to understand those things better, but right now it's being programmed at that double high ceiling.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. McGregor?
Is this a double high? I mean, this looks like it's almost a triple high.
To the atrium is more like triple high, yes. The double high is more to where you guys are sitting under at this particular point.
So this is only double high here?
Yes. That might be story and a half,
Okay.
you know. So, yeah, you're basically looking at about a 20 feet, 10 feet per story, 12 feet per story.
So would this still be 3 steps or 2 steps?
The dais itself, I believe that the dais will sit on a platform that's 1 step high. If you guys will see it and obviously have an opportunity to, I don't know, interact with it might be the wrong word, right? But if they were to model the dais, you would be able to see how tall or how short it was. The dais that we, I think that's the right word. The dais that we've seen have all been 1 step tall, which seems to work very well. I agree with you that sometimes you guys look a little squatty, especially sitting down here. Mr. Weaver, who's a tall gentleman, I see him very well. No offense, Ms. Padova, but you are a little, you are a little short. The further away you sit from the counter, the shorter you get. But that 1 step high does seem to make a lot of sense. 3 steps is awfully high. I think over in Dublin, I actually think that like where the clerk sat was actually at ground level, and then the step was actually quote unquote behind the dais even, or further back in the dais. But yeah, I would think that 1 step tall is appropriate. We saw that everywhere we went, where there was either a courtroom and or a dais where city council would sit. It does need to be elevated, just as a fun fact, I guess, it does need to be elevated because of the court function that goes on in the room. I don't know if it needs to be elevated for the legislative process that goes on in the room, but I think the state of Ohio actually has a requirement that the judge sit higher than everybody else. Amanda would be able to talk to that much better than me.
I think it helps too, just on that point, with people sitting in the back of the room, being able to see us if we're up at a slight angle.
Yep.
So I think it does matter for the legislative process too.
Yep.
I think, you know, having this or something out of our way, and if it's a flat surface or something like that, you know, everybody would be able to see us better.
Yeah.
Director Schultz, I do have a question. You were talking about overflow a little bit, and I just wanted clarity. The room that, as you're conceiving it now for council chambers, is going to still be 1 room. There's not like a false wall or anything like that, a slide wall for overflow. You're just saying that we're going to have seating at 120, 130, or whatever.
Correct.
Okay, are you looking for feedback on that specific number, or?
Yeah, if you guys wanted it to be 100 or you wanted it to be 200, this room here is the capacity of 130, but that includes everybody in the room. So the fire marshal says that the capacity of this room is 131 actually. But that includes everybody that sits up there. This room is being designed at a total capacity of about 150. 120 in the audience, 12 staff, the 11 of you folks that sit up at the dais, plus the seating capacity, that gets you to about 150. So you're basically dealing with about 20 more people than are in this room. I know that there are times where there are a few times where this room is too small. And many times where this room is too big. Yeah, I think that, and this could be something that we talk to the architect about. You know, like show us a smaller room with a more formalized overflow capacity and a lobby space that's quote unquote more appropriate. I think at that particular point, Mr. Snetzer, to your point, is it's not necessarily shrinking the space this way vertically, but shrinking the space horizontally. That does matter, because basically, as we push this building in from the new side into the existing building, that's where we'd end up seeing some of the cost savings as it related to the construction, because we'd be building less new space and utilizing more of the existing building. So that does play into it to a certain degree, yes.
Well, right now, I'm okay with 150, but I'll defer to my colleagues.
You said this room is 120, or did you say?
131.
130.
The one thing that we do not have in this building right now that we will have capacity for, or the ability to at least accommodate in the new facility, is overflow. So we've had a couple of situations where we've had lately a number of folks who have come in to attend various meetings, and the question has been raised, can we do overflow, in the committee room? We just simply don't have the ability to live stream or to even carry over the coverage of that into another room. We'll be able to do that with this facility. So in that large lobby area, we can accommodate that overflow space as well.
Having a large screen and, other audio.
Exactly.
Okay, nice, thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes, please, Ms. Powers.
Thank you. A couple questions and then a couple comments. Is there been any consideration about reorienting the council chambers 90 degrees clockwise, and then moving the offices kind of into a different location?
Moving the offices, yes. I think that if we were to get the offices out of that particular space, then we have the ability potentially to rotate. The issue with rotating it is, if we were to rotate it 90 degrees so that the dais was towards the back of the yellow portion, Mayor's Court, is now you've got access to the courtroom from Mayor's Court staff. So now people have to leave the courtroom and walk around the corner in order to get in. There's actually a door, and again, I don't have mouse control. Maybe I got pointer control. I don't know that you can see this up there. The purple dot that is the Mayor's Court window. Everybody's oriented basically in the middle of Mayor's Court there in that yellow section. If you were to just follow that directly into council chambers, there's actually a doorway there. So you can go right from the waiting area into council chambers.
One of
The-
the, oh, I'm sorry. I thought
The
you were done,
original design was that actually Mayor's Court was actually on the opposite side.
Yeah, I know.
But we felt that the separation between the two functions, the very public function of coming into the building and paying your utility bill versus the public function of coming to court, should have some level of separation, and that's when we picked Mayor's Court up and moved it to the other side. You could theoretically, Ms. Bowers, you can actually flip it so that your backs were to the lobby, but then you come up with a similar issue where overflow is a little bit disjointed from the space, and I would want to try and connect the public into the space a little bit better.
Well, and I was going to add one of the issues, because I remember we did talk about potentially, should it be flipped or could it be flicked to maximize the space? Security was another issue. So when you have it set this way, having the ability for council to exit quickly out a back door and into that pink hallway that would not be publicly accessible is a
Well-
security feature there.
Yeah, I understand that. My thinking was that is if we were to move the clerk's office to the opposite side so that they were adjacent to the Mayor's Court, and then you have council facing the lobby. You
The
have
red lobby.
The red lobby.
Yep.
Then you have the ability to integrate those glass partition walls kind of on both angles, so that when we do have overflow, there's actual visual presence between council and citizens.
Yeah, so where you're seeing the council offices now, north and south on that drawing next to the lobby, I don't like the location of those, and those need to
Yeah.
be someplace else.
Yeah.
It does get to the next question, and the next question is that public presence to the front of the building. Currently, and as I was putting this slide together and talking through it in my own head, and yes, I do have a lot of conversations with myself. Every staff person that needs to have access to a front window does it behind glass, with the exception of two departments, right now in this particular design. That's the city attorney and counsel, and that's Jeremy's office, council clerk and deputy clerk. Any records commission folks. Now, they're more than capable of using that pink corridor to navigate to a public window in order to service a customer, but there is no public interface for the council office. So one of my questions is how much of a public presence does the council office need, and how does the architect accommodate that? And that's absolutely Miss Angelou.
Ask him.
Yep.
He's the person that's going to
Yep.
have to do it.
Yep.
And I think to that point, you know, and I know Jeremy's going to engage in conversations with you on that and has already. We've had, I think the number one way that the public interfaces with the office currently is through records requests. And so I would think that from a safety perspective, given some history, that having a window access for a council clerk, whether it's Jeremy, which is hopefully for a very long time, or another clerk, or a records custodian, that they do have that ability to interface through glass.
Glass specifically for the council office. There's other
It does,
glass.
I mean, I think that can be accomplished in multiple different ways, and if there is a way for the architect to integrate that with other service, perhaps there's a way to reorient council offices so they are aligned on the same kind of interior space that the mayor's court staff is, right? So that they're sharing that wall along the blue dot line between the green space and the yellow space instead of separated.
That does, and I get it, we only do mayor's court once a week, all day. But it does raise the other question of that public interaction, and we separated it on purpose. And now, and again, if it's the will of the body and the design makes sense, we end up putting that function back together. Because now on a Thursday, Jeremy can be getting a records request at the window, and they're sitting there paying, and they're handling citations and mayor's court payments and those things through that particular window, answering questions. And then now they're mixed into that lobby area, waiting for Jeremy to come over into that space. We're not dealing with hardened criminals by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't necessarily know that it's an overly big deal, but we have separated both functions.
Could you tell me a little bit more about the thought process behind that? Because I'm not sure I completely follow.
We didn't necessarily want people who are coming to pay their utility bill interacting with people who are necessarily sitting here and waiting for mayor's court. It's one of the safety issues walking through this particular building, right? You don't know what types of issues and conversations and things that might be happening in that particular building and in the facility in the court area. I mean, they staff a bailiff in this particular facility on purpose. Because while it's not all traffic tickets.
If it's such a I'm sorry, this is a hot button for me, apparently. But these are our neighbors who
Absolutely.
most of the time have an expired license or who are going too fast down Cherry Bottom.
I completely agree.
You know, if it is that major of a safety concern, then we talk again about abolishing mayor's court, which is a popular topic that comes up from time to time. These are our friends and neighbors that maybe had an issue. That to me is, that's a surprising kind of attitude, and I'm surprised as we sit here.
I'm actually going to clarify a little bit. First of all, a lot of the people who come in for mayor's court aren't necessarily from Gahanna. There are people who maybe got a speeding ticket or something else through the city as they were coming through the city and are here to address that. Some driving without insurance, et cetera. I think the issue that came up was with regard to keeping, there's a lot of private conversations that happen. When people come in for mayor's court, sometimes they have defense counsel. They're having conversations with the prosecuting attorney that are very personal conversations, and you want to keep them separate from the people who are coming in to pay a water bill or to run a facility or to review engineering plans. So I know that Director Parker, who's been running the court services here for 15 years, one of her concerns was, can we keep keep access separate so that the people here who are here to do the business of Mayor's Court have their opportunity to have their space. And it wasn't necessarily combining the two, but it was just to create that environment for them where they can come in and it's a professional environment and they can have the confidentiality that they need to have as they're addressing the issues for which they are attending.
And I appreciate that, Mayor, and I notice here, and as was addressed, that there's 4 prosecuting attorneys' offices. I'm assuming if they're not all being actively used by a prosecuting attorney, that they could be used by defense counsel as well. The 2 small
It's for both of them, right, just small meeting rooms. Right,
small
correct.
meeting rooms. So we have, we have that space, and I think that that's important. I would just make sure that, yes, we do need a degree of privacy for those private conversations, but not, I don't see there to be a need to separate whether they're a New Albany resident or a Columbus resident that drove through our community and got a ticket. They're our neighbors in our region.
And we're also
And
have
it
New
is an
Albany.
it is an easy flip to take what you guys are seeing right now on the screen and move that to the backside of Mayor's Court. That's not a difficult thing to do. We would then be looking on the backside of that pink corridor there in order we'd be looking to move into the police, which is part of the picture you're not seeing, move into some of the space on the police department side that you're currently not seeing.
So I'm sorry, so are we talking about Mayor's Court on kind of south of the council chambers or flipping?
No, we're just talking about, so take the council offices that are on the right-hand side of the picture now, pick those up and move those to the backside of where Mayor's Court is and slide everything down.
Isn't that how it was originally there and it didn't?
No, Mayor's Court was completely on the opposite
Okay.
side. I don't really remember where council offices were in the first revision, I think, of this that we saw.
And I don't mean to get too far into the weeds. I think the point that I'm trying to make and the bigger picture that I'm trying to emphasize is I think it makes sense to have the council chambers facing the public as much as we can, so that if that means, if we're able to turn it out so it faces the lobby, so that there is that glass, at least, at a minimum glass access, that way people can still feel more involved in the process if we need that overflow space. I think that's great. Generally, though, my point is that, having greater access for flex space and greater access to use offices that might not be used all the time as in alternate ways, which it sounds like you guys are already on track with that. The other,
I'm sorry, Ms. Bowers.
oh, it's okay.
Was your question in line? Okay.
Okay.
Are you going to switch or are you going to?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay, that's what I said. I
Okay.
apologize, Ms. Bowers. Mr. Snetzer had a comment or a question.
Just with regard to the orientation of the room, logically, I think it does make sense it would be nice if there was a way that the lobby area that is being identified as overflow could at least view the room. And so I'm just curious, I guess I have a question and then perhaps a comment depending on the answer. I see the highlighted green section, which includes council chambers, and it's currently labeled, I think, like clerk of council and a couple of offices there. Did you say earlier that's being proposed to be moved south on that diagram to the blue dashed area?
Correct.
Just curious, could the dais, as it sits now, not be rotated, but keep it in the same orientation, but just shifted kind of up and to the right, maybe to the 1:30 position on a clock? And then the council offices essentially are behind the dais. And I kind of like the flow of that in the sense that, a lot of
It's connected, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that would, obviously, it would necessarily flatten the orientation of the chairs, but it would remove the council office portion as it's presented up there and would allow for the, again, some sort of glass wall that at least people from the lobby could see in those 2 instances a year when we need overflow capacity.
Correct.
Just a thought.
Yep, no, and I think that's, I've looked at that pink hallway, if you would, and can we bend it around, certain features in order to get some adjacency that we don't necessarily have with the hallway? But I think that there's opportunity there, like what you're talking about. Yep, to draw some connections.
Okay, Mrs. McGregor?
I had a couple things. I was also sort of thinking of switching the dais 90 degrees so that the overflow would, they could use the lobby for the overflow, because there's a big open space there.
Yep.
But as far as the mayor's court waiting room, I don't know what kind of charges they have now, but before, it's sort of a matter of privacy. Not everybody likes to know, everybody know they're going to court, so to me, this was more a consideration for the people going to court, that they were out of the public view, and so I don't know if they still bring prisoners from Franklin County. They used to, and sometimes they would be in handcuffs and stuff, and they come in. So I view this as more of a privacy thing for them as opposed to them sitting in the lobby like they do here.
All that is true. If any prisoner was coming from the holding area up through and into Mayor's Court, they would be brought in not through the front of the building, but through the back side of the building, through secure channels to get to the courtroom.
I had the other question I had is there, I know this will be lower, but is there some kind of not necessarily bulletproof, but some kind of extra, so that if we had to duck, God forbid, that there is a protection down here.
The dais should be made of proper materials
Yes.
that protect you guys, where you guys just
Okay.
dip down and you're protected. Yes. And the same thing with front counters and such as well.
Is that it? Or did you have something with it?
New question.
Okay. Ms. Bowers has a new question.
Thanks. Okay. All right, getting back to just bigger picture concepts here. On I know one of the questions had been talked about, and as you've talked about here, the caucus room or kind of an executive conference room. I wanted to touch on just the history as I sort of remember it, and I know my colleagues here, also have a good, maybe even a better sense than I did. But the dynamics in the committee room oftentimes with staff were different than they are from a formal council chamber. And that's definitely one of the things that I think we are missing, unfortunately. And we did this for a very good reason, right? We came in here and held all meetings because of the technology use, and that's great. My hope is that we can get back to a committee room size and function that also integrates that technology. And it seems that the caucus room may get us close to that, but if there's a way to continue to incorporate that in a way where we can really engage in a meaningful way, so that it's not like this, but maybe just across the table, I think that's going to be healthier.
So a couple things as it relates to that. Staff, we had a very long conversation sometimes where the dynamic wasn't necessarily appropriate between council and staff at different particular points in time, where it created a very informal feel, and therefore the conversation went in directions that was challenging and tricky for staff to sit through and actually engage in. There are examples, I will not share them right now, but there are examples of dynamics that were not well. And we do feel that the formality, while though sometimes different in this particular room, is actually better for staff to present. That being number one. Number two, and I think when we get down to some of this, is that room next door is very tricky and challenging, if designed similarly, very tricky and challenging for the public to actually come and engage in a meeting in. One of the things that we struggle with over at 825 is the high rent space of that first floor. Right, we're struggling right now with, how do we fit council chambers into this particular first floor, with the potential of having to add a bigger room in order for the public to come and engage in. That's not, again, past that first security perimeter. We did talk about, as an example, we talked about, should we have a separate courtroom? And when we really boiled it down, and again, we're just in schematic again with those Tetris pieces, but when we boiled it down we really don't have the footprint on the first floor in order to have a separate court space that's not directly, in the police department, as an example. So space and the design of the space does become a little bit tricky and challenging. I also do think that with a shorter dais and a little bit easier ability to have some dialogue, that it's properly designed assists in the conversation. The other thing, and just knowing the technology that's in this room, and that because we put this in here, this was about $125,000 worth of technology that we put in. And we would need that same duplicative technology in a second room. So that actually is also a cost savings to the whole overall project, So there are also those considerations.
So in theory, if council were to ever go to a more traditional committee structure rather than our committee of the whole structure, we would not be able, I'm not sure how we would be able to do that unless we had additional space.
Theoretically, I mean, I know that in other places, the traditional council or committee meetings aren't necessarily held at, 6 p.m., 7 p.m. They might be at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And then at that point, the access to the public is a little bit different and those types of dynamics. So without understanding the dynamic of exactly how that committee is going to function, it's a space. That's why the caucus room is about 25 people big. That caucus room next door, that committee room next door, does not comfortably seat 20 to 25 people. If you were in there, you would be fairly uncomfortable. 12 to 15 directors in that particular room is challenging at best. In part, that's because of the short ceiling. In part, that's because of the lighting in there. The acoustics in that room are not the best. But this room here, the caucus room, is, again, 20 to 25. So it's not small. It's just not that big either. A lot of business, my perspective is that there's less business that gets done at a regular full council meeting and more business is getting done from a dialogue standpoint at a committee meeting. The hearing of visitors obviously takes place during council meetings, but the majority of conversation that you have with staff is done at committee and not necessarily at council.
Yeah, I'll just, my position on this is that there were some cultural issues with former council, perhaps, or for specific members, not an entire body ever, but with perhaps specific members. And I don't know that I would blame that on the room or the type of environment. I think that we need to continue to work really hard at a collaborative culture. And that collaborative culture, from whether it is more workshops that can happen around a table versus from a dais, that's important to me.
Yep. I don't disagree. Go ahead, Ms. Angela.
No, go ahead.
I think that I agree from a workshop perspective. This is very authoritarian and it's very, you guys looking down at me and this, that, and the other thing. I completely agree with that. The rules and procedures dictate that it needs to be in the formal setting, and I agree with that particular component. When we're having workshops and those types of things, and it's more of a discussion, I agree. But when we're sitting here formally talking about contracts and those things, I think that's where the slightly more formal piece is desirable.
Okay, Mr. Snetzer.
Just I guess a thought, if your current proposal includes some tables, I mean, obviously this furniture is all gonna be new. It's gonna be designed, I guess, with the use and the space in mind. Could it be set up to where just simply rearranging the floor plan with tables and kind of combining them or whatever can create a de facto, if you will, committee setup?
So I say this all the time from the technology standpoint. Technology doesn't solve problems, people do. And if that means we need to move some tables and chairs around to make a more cohesive type environment for a workshop, then yeah, we should use physical labor and manual labor in order to rearrange the room slightly. We do that in here for a regular, sidewalk workshop as an example, right? We'll flip and we'll present from the floor and it's a whole lot more inviting for the folks. So yeah, I think the intent is to continue to use council chambers in that particular fashion and do exactly what you suggest, where we're just rearranging some furniture, where we may be rearranging some furniture to make a more collaborative type environment for workshops and those types of things, yes.
Ms. McGregor.
Mike, were you talking about here, using this room in a different way?
Well, conceptually, yes, but I mean, with specifically with regard to the setup here, as opposed to having a designated committee room, which, chews up space, it duplicates, as Mr. Schultz mentioned, duplicates the need for technology. Spend it once, but just reconfigure the floor plan for committees. I mean, if you get, I don't know how easy those tables are to move. They don't look like.
These
they're
are
on
pretty
wheels.
heavy,
Yeah,
but I can move them myself.
with the pinky, yeah.
Well,
I mean, if you got furniture that was meant to be moved around, like I believe next door, that furniture is meant to be moved around, and it kind of, it joins in ways that you can create different layouts. If you got something similar like that.
That's what I was just gonna bring up. The point was, I mean, we don't always have to be here. We could be out there and we could rearrange the furniture in this room and still, because the technology would be here,
Sure.
and so we wouldn't have to duplicate it somewhere else.
Yeah,
So
that's the
that,
thinking.
I was just making sure we were honest.
I think the problem with the room over there is obviously it's just very narrow. And indeed, we had the very narrow things, and we'd have all of the people around, and then all these other people would come in, and they had no ability to talk
Correct.
on that particular thing. So, and I wanted to talk about that caucus. If I have the one that's got the purple in that, is that the caucus place that I have?
yes, ma'am.
Because it's hard to read. Just so long as it's bigger. It just has to be bigger than what it has been here,
You can
because
use
we
them
can
also.
always use rooms. I want to go backwards in time by 30 years, 40 years, because we used to have various places, like one would be Parks and Rec maybe, and another one would be on something else, and another one. And each one would have three people, or, and from from this particular group, and that's how we would work those things, and then we would come back together and say what we had gotten done. So we didn't have to be at everything. So whether you like that or not, I mean, I think this is much better myself, because everybody's here and seeing. And I didn't quite understand what you meant about the culture when you spoke.
Well, Mr. Schultz had pointed out that there had been some incidents in the committee room that he didn't want to get into detail about, and I acknowledge that there may have been with prior individual members, but it certainly was not representative of the body as a whole.
Mr.
I'm just
Weaver.
dying to know what that was, because I was probably there.
Mr. Weaver.
I just had a quick point of information here. What is in the council chambers, I guess, southwest of where the mayor and city attorney would be sitting? What is?
That's storage.
That is storage, okay. So I think for me, just to kind of put a button on my comments, safety for staff is absolutely foremost, and right behind that is public access. So whatever we can do, and of course, I defer to Clerk Van Meter to ensure that council office is publicly accessible, whether it's through glass or an entryway, I think is expected and necessary. And from a public record standpoint, is required by law as much as practically possible. I don't have the objection to rotating all of council chambers essentially 90 degrees clockwise, if that facilitates that aspect of it. But I would defer to public access and safety being foremost. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Padova?
So I just want to clarify that, so you were talking about moving the deputy clerk of council and clerk of council, all those offices there, to the blue part there near the supply that is outlined behind the pink, right? And the pink is, you need to badge in. So if we were, okay, so first, if we were to do that, then would we be able to have chambers up against that overflow area and have it some sort of like glass wall or something to be visible? Okay. And then if the offices were back in the pink, behind the pink line, would we be able to maybe like pop out one office to be next to the caucus room and have a window right there out into the lobby area? Or would that mess with the security of things.
No, that would not at all. I think, like, so in that lower corner, that actually, I think it says MAG, because I think it's the magistrate's office, I think, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But that technically could be a public vestibule, like, where the clerks would have the ability to interact with the public. I think we have some options. I think as we've been sitting here and having the conversation, there's even the potential maybe to, in that mayor's court space, like Ms. Bowers was indicating, maybe we could build a second window that interacts with the red corridor as opposed to the waiting area with the waiting area of mayor's court to get a little bit of a different feel for those folks. So I think based on the comment, I think it's easy for us to go back and have some of those conversations and dialogue with the architect and basically, you know, one of the things that I have to remind myself and sometimes some of the committee members is that, you know, let the designer design and we just kind of inform. So I think a lot of these comments have all been good. You know, we can kind of hand it to them and say what makes the most sense. And I got a lot of information as it relates to, I think, Mr. Weaver's comment about staff safety and public access are spot on there, and two things that we will make sure that are paramount in the design itself for council office specifically. Rotating council chambers and those types of things, we'll play with those as the architect gets a little bit deeper into it. I think that council chamber's been rotated 3 times now.
That's good, that's good.
It hasn't ended up in the parking lot, so that's good.
That's one quick question.
Absolutely.
Where are the restrooms?
The restrooms, you see the purple on the opposite side of the drawing? Those are the staff restrooms and the public restrooms.
Okay, all right.
Right here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Schultz, and especially for bearing with me through the feedback. I appreciate it.
Mr. Schultz, I just wanted to reiterate, I think that you've heard a lot of great dialogue. I think, and I'm not going to go over all those different points that you just summarized, but one of the ones that I definitely want to join with in the chorus is about the amenities of being able to actually have a better dialogue with directors. And so if we can make a facility that could actually hold regular council meetings as such, committee meetings as such, that actually are more informal. Back in the day when we did have committee meetings over there, it was better, and it actually did promote that dialogue. You know, and more, if you will, freer, more relaxed atmosphere between directors and other staff and council members. So I think that's a really good point that Councilwoman Bowers actually drove home. So the other items, I think you've heard enough. My point, you know, about the mayor's court, we got to keep it separate. But I'm interested in having someday the dialogue about, do we actually need it? Because I don't know if that's true.
Are we going to take out the stuff all around here and use part of that at the new place, rather than just leaving all these things that we put so wonderfully?
The decor?
Yeah, no,
Like-
the
Give me the cameras.
the cameras and all that.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
go-
some of
Are we
that,
going
yeah.
to take those? and-
Absolutely. Some of that will definitely come with us. Whether this exact setup comes with us or not, we're not 100% sure.
Yeah, because it would be a shame, well, of course, we have a few years
Yeah.
before this actually
Correct.
will be happening,
Correct.
but, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you. This ends the first of our workshop. Thank you, everybody, for actually really good dialogue. About a couple of minutes, and we'll get into our next regular meeting.
is more of yeah. Maybe we can touch base.
This one's for you,
Thank you.
right?
Yeah.
You're good to go. Thank you, appreciate it, thank you.
Okay. Come back to me. Oh, shoot. Hey Siri. Did the, oh, forget it.
Is what he said, so.
Let me just get my stuff here. Oh, there, this is good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hang on. Okay.
Yes, I am. Okay, yeah.
Okay, are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah. I got my blood pressure down.
All right. Good evening.
Sounded
Sorry
loud.
about throwing the hammer around. Well, I want to welcome everybody to our regular council meeting, Monday, March 20th. Happy spring, by the way. It is the equinox. And I'd like to go ahead and call to order with the invocation and the pledge led by Councilman Weaver.
Let us rise each morning and strive each day to do only that which brings happiness and joy to others, and avoid doing things that cause others hurt and pain. Let us use our minds and our reason to further that mutuality and reciprocity inherent in human relationships, and let us always respect the dignity and worth of each other. And let us, above all, love one another, not to obtain rewards for ourselves now or hereafter, or to avoid punishment, but rather always to lift up one another and bring each other peace. I pledge.
Thank you. Jeremy, please call a roll.
Angelou,
Here.
Bowers,
Here.
McGregor, Padova,
Here.
Renner,
Here.
Schnetzer, Weaver.
Here.
Excellent, thank you. Item B, additions or corrections to our agenda. Do we have anything? All right, seeing none. Item C, hearing of visitors. We do have a resolution, a presentation by one of our colleagues, Mr. Weaver.
Great. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. As many folks know, March is Theater in Our Schools Month, and we are fortunate this evening to be joined by GLHS Drama Director and Teacher Cindy Maciosi, as well as I see several students. Mr. Maciosi, as the fellow husband of a theater teacher. I know, I've been in your shoes, I know your shoes. I now get to walk miles in your shoes, so I get it. But honored to have everybody here in Chambers this evening. Just a couple lessons that have always stuck with me about theater, and one of them that Mrs. Maciosi touched on quite frequently is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I see, yes, some smiles from the students there. And that translates directly into our work on this body, and as a city altogether, we each have that which we contribute, and when it does come together and we can pass effective legislation, it can be beautiful. Seeing a production come together, as I've seen numerous productions at GLHS stage, among others, and soon on a future new stage, it can also be a beautiful thing as well. There was a study by the Journal of Civil Society that showed that audience-based participation in the arts and personal participation in creating art are both linked to higher levels of civic engagement and social tolerance, needed now more than ever. And that another study by the William Penn Foundation found that arts education helps to increase students' ability to manage behavior, make decisions, and cultivate a positive concept of self. I know firsthand and through my wife's experiences as a theater teacher that often the theater classroom is the safest place in the building for our students, where they can feel loved and accepted, and I just think it's vitally important, especially in today's day and age, that mental health being what it is in our country. I think I can leave it there. So at this time, I'm happy to have folks join me down for the presentation. Colleagues, if you'd like to join as well, we can grab a photo with the students and Ms. Maciosi, and if you'd like to say a few words afterwards, totally appropriate.
I'm going to let the kids talk just very, very briefly. They have a couple statements that they'd like to share with you.
Let's grab a photo and then we'll come back up and.
Do you want us?
Is that a new theater shirt? Oh, okay. Say that into the microphone later.
to see you. It's good to see you.
I just want to say thank you so much. It's really nice to know that we have a community that is backing a program that has paved the foundation for all of our high school careers. It's a program that brings a lot of joy to not only our lives, but so many other people, and theater really is very important. Thank you so much.
City Council members, thank you so much for recognizing this. We feel so appreciated and loved in this community, and we feel that theater is here to stay once and for all. It is one of my most favorite things, one of our most favorite things. And like Vice President Weaver said, it is the most safest place in the school, and I feel so welcome and so lucky that we have people like you guys supporting us.
Like everyone's saying, it's like our home in the school, and like I spend half of my day in that classroom, like as a choice, because so many people just want to be there. It's such a good environment, and it's a good place to be.
Hello, I'm David. I just want to say that theater's been a very important part of my life and my family, and that's carried on into the high school ever since I was a little kid. I've always been in part of theater, and being creative has been a great part of my upbringing, and it's really made me who I am today, and I'm really thankful. So thank you.
Thank you so much for recognizing theater. Theater is such an important part of my life. I'm able to, at Gahanna, share both sides of the stage because we do something called CRAST, which is crew cast. Everybody's involved and everybody has an opportunity to shine, which is really special. Thank you.
Oh God, this is like this.
I understand.
That doesn't usually happen to me. Like they've all said before, theater, I have found my voice. Miss Maciosi helped me come out of my shell quite a bit. And speaking of theater in our schools, we do have our upcoming production of Newsies, the musical, and we really appreciate all the support that you guys give us in order to put on these productions and give the community like just a sense of happiness and community, really. So thank you. Ditto, like everything that they've said. I do want to take a moment to thank every one of you. Thank you, Mr. Weaver. It's a little bit bittersweet right now as I am retiring at the end of this year, and I don't know what's next, but if I have a program that is built upon the backs of these students, I'm leaving it in great hands. So thank you so much for the years of support, and look forward to being out in the audience watching with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Absolutely, and thank you, Mr. Weaver. You know, you did a resolution and you brought a lot of kids, and it's always a powerful thing to hear from future leaders. So, thank you. All right, Jeremy, Council Clerk, do we have any more speaker slips?
We just had the one.
Just the one? Okay. It is on Academy Ridge. I would like our Assistant Director of Law, Matt Rott, to actually speak on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know there's been a lot of communications between the community and City Hall over the past week about this situation. What I want everyone to know is that there was a 2506 appeal taken in early 2020 regarding action by the Building and Zoning Appeals Board. Further, the owner-developer of the property had threatened federal civil rights litigation against the city. Settlement was reached in May of last year, May of 2022, that contained the terms of the 2019 Planning Commission approval for this parcel. That resolution was reached. It did not require approval from the mayor's office or from city council, but that resolved the litigation and the threatened litigation. The discussion at that time was that before anything was done on this property, the owner-developer and the city would issue a joint statement to the residents. We did not hear anything from the developer until February of this year. At that time, it was just regarding removal of trees. The removal of trees is something that, because the final development plan from 2019 is now approved pursuant to that settlement, the trees would be able to be removed. There was not permission to move dirt or put in a temporary driveway, which has been done in the last week. There was a cease and desist order issued to the developer today over that. We do have a conference, the city attorney and I have a conference with the attorney for the neighborhood association tomorrow afternoon. So we will know more then.
Mr. Roth, thank you very much. All right, I'd like to go ahead and call Howard Zitzman to the podium, please.
I actually think Mr. Zitzman left.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that. All right, item D, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
So moved, Mr. President.
I have a first by Mr. Snetzer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Bowers. Any discussion? Okay, Jeremy, please call the roll.
Schnetzer?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
McGregor?
Yes.
Padova?
Yes.
Renner?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes.
Angelou?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Consent agenda is passed. Item E, ordinances for introduction and first reading. I'll read this into the record, but we're not taking any action tonight. Ordinance 16-2023, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with Strausser Paving Company, Inc. for the 2023 street program ST-1101. Item F, correspondence and actions. Mr. Clerk.
Nothing this evening.
Okay, thank you. My colleagues on council, anything? All right, thank you. We're moving along. Item G, representatives, Community Improvement Corporation. I did give you our report from CIC the last time. I wanted to just give a shout out that I did send out an email to all of council for the 2023 financial statements from the CIC. They have been approved. And also just a reminder that we do have the Gahanna CIC, much to the great work by Nathan Strum, our director, and our mayor. We do have that website up, is GahannaCIC.com, and you can find all of 2019 through 2022 minutes and financial statements there now. And in the future, we do intend to actually post the 2003 items. Mr. Weaver, do you have anything to add?
Just that we are meeting tomorrow morning at 7:30 in the committee room.
7:30 or 8 o'clock?
7:30.
7:30. Thank you.
Set the alarm early.
Yeah, and thank you, because I'm adjusting my calendar now. Okay, item number 2, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. Ms. Angelou.
Thank you. Very honestly, we have our report that's already, you have all received, and I would like to just take a moment to talk about the wonderful executive committee retreat that the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission had. It was a very awful day with the weather. It was really terrible, but it was just a wonderful opportunity for us to be in New Albany, Ohio, which is, obviously just to the north of us. And we were at the Philip Heights Center for the Healthy New Albany, which was an amazing, amazing place to be. The intention was for us to talk about all the things that on the executive committee we wanted to be working for. And so the first one was just kind of, we talked to each other quite a bit, and William Murdoch brought about the strategic framework review. From there, the strategic messaging was facilitated by Hunter Marketing and it was extremely well done. There's something about messaging that's important, and so we talked a great deal about that. Then we had the joy of going in the rain to see the tour of the Intel site and the New Albany projects. And as much as the Intel site was something to see, obviously it's huge, it's going to be huge. The projects that New Albany have are so amazing that it's just you kind of going, oh, there's another building there, and there's a building here, and there's another building here, and it's quite an amazing thing to see. And some of that belongs to Columbus, and some of that belongs to, I think, a little bit of Westerville at times. So that was wonderful as well. Then we had a conversation, a lunch with Kenny McDonald from Columbus Partnership, which of course is, Kenny is one of the best. Followed by the leaders' conversation on housing, which was facilitated by Jamie Green. So I just wanted to say it was just a wonderful day for the executive committee from MORPC, as well as to see New Albany and all of the things that are there. And I think that we can feel very, very happy that we are neighbors, and we're good neighbors, and we hope that New Albany is a good neighbor to us all the time, too. So that's all I have.
Thank you. School Board, Ms. Bowers. I'm sorry. Number 3 is Convention Visitors Bureau, Ms. Padova.
Thank you. Last Thursday was the Visit Gahanna annual meeting. And I'd like to thank Councilman Weaver as well as Councilwoman Angelou and McGregor for joining us there. There's a great speaker talking about tourism to Ohio, and actually said that we are getting right up there with the Visit Michigan commercials, and really expanding the reach with getting people to come to Ohio to visit. So hopefully that will also translate to more visits to Gahanna as well. Mark your calendars for Herb Day, which is going to be Saturday, May 6th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And it will be at Creekside Plaza this year. So it will not be over by the pool where it was last year. You can celebrate Gahanna's herb capital status and enjoy the plant sale, urban plant-themed activities, and also support local artists and herb-based vendors. We are still looking for more volunteers to help with Herb Day, so you can sign up at ohioherbcenter.org. That's all for me.
Thank you. School Board, Ms. Bowers.
Thank you. I'd like to start by congratulating Jordan Mills. Jordan placed 7th at the Ohio High School Sports Association Girls Wrestling Tournament last week. This was the first girls wrestling state tournament in Ohio, and Jordan made Gahanna-Lincoln history as the first girl to place in that from Gahanna-Lincoln. So congratulations to Jordan. I also wanted to share that there was a great conversation last week that was hosted by the school district in collaboration with the city, and particularly our law enforcement Chief Spence on supporting our youth. There were a lot of statistics that were shared regarding the state of our youth and what is going on at a national level, also translating at a local level as well. I applaud the school district on hosting a really vulnerable and insightful conversation, and specifically addressing items where they know that they have room for improvement and are seeking to improve. Thank you also to Chief Spence for talking about specifically what our department is doing to collaborate with the school district to ensure safety and support for the students. A couple of business items I wanted to mention, because as this is going to come up, I'm sure, in the coming year, and was a topic that overlapped with the city last year. The district has adopted a policy to participate in real property tax valuation proceedings. There is now a uniform policy that has been adopted, and that no property owner complainant would be singled out for special or different treatment. The district is taking a look at 3 resolutions, or did take a look at 3 resolutions to file complaints against the valuation of real property. This was on the Finance and Facilities Committee agenda from last week to address the major discrepancy between the sales price and the current fair market value. This impacts this impacts how much tax is paid by neighboring property owners when one owner underpays. So if you have more questions about that or would like to discuss that, please reach out to Finance Chair Daphne Mooring or the Superintendent. I guess I should actually probably refer you to Scott Gooding, the CFO of the district. There are facilities updates that have been posted online and on YouTube. The high school the stadium is on track for completion in September of this year. And the parking is consistent with its original projected completion date. The high school projected completion date has shifted from June to fall of 2025. So there is about a 2 or 3 month delay expected. And the district has posted some PDF updates identifying some cost differences and some timeline differences. So I applaud the district for making that clear and easy for residents to read. Finally, the State of the Schools address is going to be held on April 13th at 7 o'clock at Gahanna Lincoln High School Auditorium. I assume that it will also be video recorded or streamed, but if you would like to attend, that will be April 13th at 7 o'clock at the high school auditorium. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Item H, official reports. Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Some of this is going to sound a little bit redundant, but I want to add some information. Thank you very much, Councilwoman Bowers, for referencing the community forum that was held last Wednesday. Chief Spence and I were proud to partner with our colleagues from Gahanna Jefferson Public Schools in that forum, which was called Supporting Our Youth, and that event was held at Middle School West. The idea for that community discussion actually began with Dr. Deagle and I late last summer, you might recall, shortly after we were in council chambers when we had issues, behavioral issues with folks at our pools. And we had to change the rules, and we had a couple of our staff members, young staff members, come in and talk about what they were encountering with patrons from our pools. And it was following that night, because Dr. Deagle had just started and she was here at the council meeting that night, that she and I began to talk about how do we support our youth in our community. And as the months continued to evolve and mental health issues began to really, again, I think increase throughout the community, what they were seeing in the schools and what Chief Spence was seeing with certainly our PD with the need for mental health calls, the concept of that forum really just started to take shape. As I shared last Wednesday, I think the kids who are growing up today face many challenges and pressures that are unlike anything that we saw when we were growing up, and it's difficult for parents today to really truly understand how to best support their children, and for us as a community to understand how to best support the youth that we have. We talked about how the fact that this is not a school issue, it's not a city issue, it's a societal issue, and it's not unique to Gahanna. This is prevalent nationwide. The conversation, I thought the mental health clinician from the school, Lisa Kelly, did a phenomenal job of giving a lot of statistics and a lot of concrete facts around what they are seeing within the district, as well as offering resources, not only what's offered in the school district, we talked about what's offered within the community here, what the city does, what our PD does. This is not a one-off conversation. This will be a continuing dialogue that we look to have. The parents that night had the chance to ask questions, and there were a lot of them. The note cards that were coming up were very, the stack was very big. So I do know that they will be, they meaning Dr. Deagle and her team, are putting together an FAQ with all of the questions that were posed that night, and then that will be put out, answers to those questions will be put out, I believe, online within the next few days. So keep an eye out for that. But again, it's just really the beginning, I think, of an important conversation that we need to have as a community. Last week, speaking with facilities, thank you for your showing up here a little bit early tonight to start talking about council's input on the council space. Last week, Director Schultz and I spent some time with our senior members over at the Senior Center. He provided them with a facilities update as well. And although he and our team from MSA will be doing focus group meetings, but not only with our individual departments, but also perhaps with the seniors as well. It's been a good opportunity to at least hear their questions, to start to really get an idea for what their concerns are as we start to look at how that space lays out within the senior center, what our needs are in terms of having it being a multi-purpose use versus, again, making sure that their space for their senior use is protected. So great dialogue with them, and we continue to keep them in the loop as well. Thank you, Councilwoman Padova, for referencing the Visit Gahanna annual meeting. Several members of our senior leadership team and I attended that meeting as well at the sanctuary. I thought Lori Kappas and her team did a wonderful job of really updating everyone who was present on the work that they have done in 2022 to market and promote the city, to draw visitors here and to generate economic impact for our businesses. That truly is part of economic development, and there's a lot of overlap between what Visit Gahanna does and what our economic development department does as well. They market to visitors, we try to market to our residents. So to that, in that vein, coming up in the next several weeks, we're going to have the first of a several session series where we are working with some of our community organizational groups. We will start with the Economic Development Department, Visit Gahanna, and the Chamber, because those are the three that really overlap. If you were to draw a Venn diagram around the work of those three entities, those are the three that overlap the most. So understanding how those pieces fit together and how to align the interests and the mission and the vision so that we're working together and not stepping on each other and everybody has a clear path forward, that will be the first step in that conversation. And then continuing dialogue with other community organizations beyond that. So we'll be sharing more on that with you. And Councilwoman Padova, I know you'd asked to be a part of that, so I'll make sure I keep you in the loop. Thank you, Mr. President, for the CIC report. I add one addendum that next Monday, Betty Collins, the president of the board of CIC, will be here to present the annual report for CIC. She was very glad because she had a tooth pulled today, and she called about 5 o'clock, and she was worried it was tonight. And then I said, she has a breather. It's for next week, so she will be here next week. And then lastly, this Thursday, we will hold State of the City at 825 Tech Center Drive. The doors will open at 5:30, program to begin approximately around 6:15. We have multiple community organizations that will be on hand, as well as several local restaurants. It's not dinner. Don't expect dinner. It will be snacks. So please either, tide yourself over to dinner afterward or eat before you come. But we do look forward to seeing all of you. And we invite our residents to attend, not only to see 825 Tech Center Drive so they can see the before and the after, but also to hear the work that we have been doing on their behalf as the city in 2022 and how we are building the foundation for the future of this city. So again, look forward to seeing you on Thursday night. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Roth?
Nothing further.
You spoke once, right?
I got my chance.
You got your 15 minutes of fame. All right, good. Item I, council comment, Ms. Sanjalou.
I too went to visit Gahanna, and it was just such a nice, wonderful place to be in the sanctuary. The food was good, and the speaker was good as well. I thought it was interesting when he said that Ohio is not growing. Well, that's not true of this region. Our region is growing very, very quickly, and it's going to be 3 million in a very short period of time. So I kind of wanted to stop and say something to him about that. But perhaps the whole bit of Ohio maybe will be a little bit less, but not here in central Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McGregor.
David Cremine was one of the young men up here with the theater department, and I've known his parents and his grandparents, and he asked if I introduced myself to him, and he said, "Are you Mr. McGregor's wife, or mom?" And I said, "No, I'm Mr. McGregor's wife," and he goes, "Oh." And I said, "Wait a minute, you mean my son, the teacher at the high school?" And he says, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, yeah, I'm his mom." So anyway, it was a minute. You'd have to think about which Mr. McGregor anymore now that my son is a teacher. So And I went to Varsity Varieties, and it was wonderful. I went on Saturday night, and it wasn't a huge crowd, but it was a very appreciative crowd. They were all very supportive of every act, and they were all just wonderful. It was fun to see all the kids. And then yesterday, I went to the choir. It'll be their first out-of-state trip ever. They're going to New York City for, I think, 4 or 5 days, and they're going to go to St. Patrick's Cathedral, St. John something. He said it was a church that's 300 yards long. I can't hardly imagine that. I'm going to check it out. But anyway, they had a choir at Stony Brook yesterday in preparation, and they did all their songs, and they joined the chorale with them. And they were just wonderful, and it was packed. We live right down the street, and I thought I can get there at 10 till or 5 till, and I pulled in, and I almost went back home because the parking lot was packed. And this was, I think, a group of about 70 students, and the choir, and the a cappella choir and the chorale, and they performed all their songs, and it wasn't just parents. A lot of people from the church, they'd announced it in the services before, but there were just a lot of people from the church that came to support the kids and were appreciative afterwards. And it was, both of these things were just such, everybody appreciated the kids doing their thing and their abilities and their talents. And it was just so nice to see the public supporting both of these activities in the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to say that. We have a wonderful community.
Thank you. Ms. Bowers?
Thank you. I attended the Columbus Metropolitan Club Forum this past Wednesday. I know the mayor was there along with Councilwoman Angelou. The panel was on the Amtrak expansion here in Ohio and featured William Murdoch, the executive director of MORPC, along with Aaron Rosiello of All Aboard Ohio, and a regional director of Amtrak. The conversation was extraordinarily interesting. Lots of discussion that helped me understand that this is not as far away as it was. And there is projection for real Amtrak rides within the next 5 years. It was exciting to hear that they had been planning routes and had identified existing rail that was already owned by the state. In order to
Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati, and Dayton.
Yes, yes. So a lot of really powerful discussion and trying to get this high-speed rail in place in Ohio, or at least in the, yes, high-speed rail, and then certainly with the hope that we increase the speed beyond the speed of cars to really improve business and productivity across the state. And reduce the reliance on the use of vehicles across our communities. I also wanted to congratulate Mark Tynus, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, and the entire... Tynus, thank you, Mayor. Mark Tynus and the entire staff of Simple Times. Ms. Padova and I attended the ribbon cutting. Director Strum was also there from the city, along with a few other friendly faces from the city, to celebrate Simple Times expansion. It was hosted on Thursday by the Gahanna Chamber of Commerce. A really powerful event that shows some really cutting edge and innovative technology and trends that Simple Times is doing. Mark was sharing very proudly that he failed forward. He had started an initial business and it wasn't going in the right direction, but he took everything that he learned from that initial experience and really grew into something that I think is going to be powerful and have a lot of staying ability. With that, I will conclude my comments for tonight. Happy spring, happy equinox.
Here we are.
Thank you. Ms. Padova?
Thank you. I want to thank Councilman Weaver for putting together the resolution for Theater in Our Schools Month, and also all of the students and teacher who came this evening. I'm always impressed by the students who walk up to the microphone here, and I'm sure that these kids, it was probably nothing because they're getting on stage and performing theater, but that is quite an act of bravery for most people to get on stage and get in front of a microphone. And I was also at the, as Ms. Bowers stated, the Simple Times ribbon cutting. And to say I was impressed is an understatement. The work that he has put into that business is amazing. And to see, I think he said either 5 or 6 years ago, he was making batches of his mixers in a pot in his kitchen, taking them to farmers markets, and now he's in this huge building there in hundreds of stores. It is really impressive. It takes a lot of grit to get to that point. So it's very nice to have that kind of expansion right here in Gahanna. And with that, happy spring.
Thank you. Mr. Snutzer?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, not a whole lot to add, but I do want to follow up on a comment that Councilmember McGregor made regarding the history display at the library. So this is now my 3rd time through the doors at the new library since they opened up, and rather than my usual route, which is promptly over to the reservations and then the checkout, I took you up on the recommendation to go upstairs and look at the history display. And if you guys haven't gone up there, it's at the top of the, when you come up the steps, it will be directly behind you all the way up against the window. And there's a number of items that are on loan from the Gahanna Historical Society. There were, I think you had mentioned the Civil War correspondence. There was some pictures from the '59 flood. I believe I got the date right. Big Walnut Country Club, some newspaper clippings as well from when Gahanna went from, again, correct me if I'm wrong, a village to a city. And again, just some of the, I think a lot of times history, you read about it in a textbook, and it can be a bit dry. But when you see photographs from, a bygone era of the place that you live, and you can kind of make out, what Mill Street used to look like, or what Granville Street used to look like, or the bridge over Big Walnut, I think history in some respects comes alive. So I thought it was really cool. If anybody hasn't checked it out, again, top of the steps and immediately go behind you. Not sure how long it'll be on loan, but it's there.
It's going to be there quite a while, and
Okay.
we'll refresh it periodically, so.
Cool, excellent. Well, looking forward to, I guess, that refresh. I thought what was there was very cool. So again, just a reminder that it's there if anyone hasn't already checked it out. Pretty cool stuff. That's all from me.
Good, thank you. Mr. Weaver?
Great. Thank you, Mr. President. I will be brief this evening. First, I want to thank my colleagues for their support of the resolution. Nice to have young people filling the chamber, and just grateful for all of the teachers in our lives, but a special thanks to Mrs. Maciosi and her career at the high school. Look forward to the next chapter. Also attended the Visit Gahanna annual meeting. Great to see so many active folks in our community attending, business individuals, volunteers, folks from the administration, parks, and council as well, and board members from Visit Gahanna. And it was refreshing to hear from our speaker that even though we might not see the commercials because we already live in Ohio, that they do target the surrounding states with these tourism videos. And I hadn't ever given that a moment of thought until he said it. I said, well, that makes an absolute lot of sense because I'm here. So we are competing, and they did show one of those commercials, and it was very nicely done and made with all Ohio actors and products. They were wearing Ohio T-shirts that were made in Ohio. And it really does show off the best of our state and what we have to offer. And certainly here in central Ohio, we know that, but it is okay to go venture around the rest of the state and see what the Buckeye State has to offer. I do want to thank, without speaking on behalf of all of my colleagues, just say how thankful I am to everybody who has been reaching out regarding recent development projects throughout the community. Folks have certainly seen on the news about the proposed Sheets development, and we certainly appreciate everyone reaching out. And I would just say that there is a process for these things, and the process is going. The process is moving, and no one here or on any of the boards or commissions takes their responsibilities lightly, whether the items are before this body or another. We value the work that we do, and we value the community's input, and we put effort into it, and we thank everyone for reaching out. I think that is it for me this evening, Mr. President.
Well said, Mr. Weaver. Just wanted to actually thank you for the resolution tonight, and thank you again. Ms. Padova, thank you so much for bringing up Simple Times. I do know personally that I went to the Gahanna flea market, not the flea market, but the farmer's market, and Simple Times was there, and the city has been working with them long and hard to find them a place, so the mayor's office and others. So thank you. Unfortunately, I missed that event, and I was very sorry to hear it, but sorry to miss that. But it was a very good, their products are very, very good. And I think you even were telling me about some of the environmental things that they do with their peels, right?
Yes. They they take all of the fruit, citrus and whatnot, and then all the peels that they're able to salvage to use at Noble Cut. Yeah, and I think they're also working with other distilleries and such to try to get to zero waste.
Wonderful.
And Councilman, because I know you're interested in the sustainability plan that we've been working on, Mark and I have been having conversations around a business food composting program, how to best capture that, so we can help with that as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. The only other thing I have tonight is, like Councilwoman Weaver has already said, we really do deeply value people to actually come and talk to us. Our city is really experiencing a lot of stress, and we understand it. We've been there. I've been on council for 11 years. For a while, it was quiet, and now all of a sudden, development is happening, and development around us is actually reaching a crescendo, and the city is actually getting notoriety. On that note, come to the State of the City and learn more about all the wonderful things that we're doing. So with that, I have no further comment, and thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you.